is talk. Email, junk mail, voicemail. We're talking faster than ever before. We're making new connections and new communities. Our neighbours no longer next door, but distant nodes in a wired world. For thousands of years, we've stopped to talk. Where we talk and who we talk to define our community and who we are within it. Talking isn't just something we do. It's a part of what we are. Biologically, we're built to talk.
There's three features in the skull that are associated with modern human language. The first is the large brain, of course. This gives us the cognitive capacity to understand language and to produce language. The second feature is the mandible, or the jaw. In humans, it's short and it's deep. And this allows us to get our tongue around the sounds that we speak. Now, the third thing is the base of the skull. In humans, the skull is flexed. It's more or less pushed in at the bottom. And this is associated with a low larynx. And this is very important to the construction of human sound. So there's three features here. It's the position of the larynx, and the shape of the mandible, and of course the large brain size. Now, our early ancestors didn't have these characteristics. This individual lived about 2.8 million years ago, and you can see that it has a very small brain size. In fact, the size of the brain here would have been about a third the size of a modern human brain. It also would have had a very large mandible, and this wouldn't have given the proper geometry to the muscles of the tongue to produce the human sounds. So there was some time between the time this individual lived, about 3 million years ago, and the present day, when we have modern humans, that language evolved.
Today, communication has gone far beyond talk. Our technology defies time and space. Writing makes us immortal. The telephone transports our voices godlike at the speed of light. Our technologies are changing who we are, and we don't know how.
As for corporations, well, they've got a real problem. They just can't predict the future. So one strategy is to make up stories about the future, stories about the inevitability of technology, how it will improve our lives, how we have to adapt in our own best interest. But these are just stories. We don't have to believe them.
In 1997, this leafy North London street became the heart of an experiment. For the first time in the world, the American software giant Microsoft gave away a stack of computers and switched a whole street online.
The first thing that happened was a letter came through the door, which most of us could hardly believe, because here was somebody offering free computers, free telephone lines, practically free telephone bills to play around with as we wanted to.
What we're interested in with MSN Street is seeing what the effects of giving a physical community in the same time and space access to the internet, because all that people had really seen before was the creation of virtual communities based on people with a common interest around the world in a different time and space.
Our technology is taking us into uncharted territory, where even mighty corporations can only guess the future, and where our relationships will never be the same again.
It's gone.
Over the previous 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, people were used to the idea that if you wanted to send a message to somebody 100 miles away, it involved sending it via a messenger on horseback, and that would take the best part of a day. Suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, you have a technology that can send a message over that sort of distance instantly.
It wasn't wireless or optical fibre that changed the pace of human life. It was the telegraph. It brought a new age of immediate news, but it also often demanded an immediate response.
We like to talk about information overload, but actually this happened for the first time in the 1860s, which was when business really woke up to the telegraph. And the problem with this was that once one business had it, all the other businesses had to adopt it too, because otherwise they couldn't compete.
From a world of village communities, rumour and gossip, the world became a web of wires, carrying news and data. The information age had begun, and the race was on to develop ever more powerful technologies for a commercial world hungry for a competitive edge.
The main thing about the telephone was you didn't need to have a skilled operator. You just picked it up and talked into it. You didn't need to learn Morse code. You didn't need to have fancy telegraphic apparatus. You just needed the telephone.
No one was surprised that the telephone caught on. The advantages for business were clear, but it didn't take long before it was being used for all the wrong reasons. To chat.
Overseas operator,
By the 1950s, the world was rushing to connect.
And he's positively frantic.
The telephone spread from the boss's office onto every desk in a business and migrated from domestic halls to bedrooms and kitchens. Suddenly, telephones were everywhere.
Hello, yes, this is Mary. How are you? Bye.
In less than 100 years, the telephone has not only changed the way we talk, it's changed the world.
Refrigerator and a phone, a kitchen phone, a bright red phone. I gotta go. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. I'll call you later.
The telephone really is central to the way we lead our lives at the end of the 20th century in what we might call the developed world. If you took telephones out of people's lives, the way they lead their lives, the way they work, the way they socialize, even if you like their intimate relationships, would be profoundly changed.
Well, what I have at home, I just have a normal corded telephone. I do have a cordless as well. I do have a mobile and a pager. Not that I need to be contacted that more than anybody else.
Could never live without it. Absolutely impossible. No one can. I see everyone in the streets with it, I have to say.
New inventions can change the world in unimagined ways. In the case of telephone, for example, it introduces new ways of thinking about communications, new social practices, new ways of talking. And this is true for a wide range of communication technologies. And the other thing is that communication technologies don't tend to replace each other completely, but rather they blend together in a sort of communication soup. This is what we've been doing for tens of thousands of years. Small groups of people exchanging social and personal information. And in a way, that's what language and communication is primarily about. It's about making contact, making relationships with other people. And it's this chat, gossip, the rumor mill of the organization, which actually is the lifeblood of the organization and can make the difference between an effective and indeed efficient organization and one which is struggling, which has low morale, which is not adaptive and is not going to survive.
If we look at primates, we see that they live in very complex, dynamic social groups. Animals are forming alliances, ganging up on each other, keeping track of who's doing what to whom and so on. In fact, in a rudimentary form, you see all the elements of human social life and human politics there. Now, the way these groups seem to be kept together is by a constant grooming of each other, grooming each other's fur and so on.
The larger group you have, the more difficult it becomes to keep the cohesion of the group. And one of the interesting ideas is that language may have arisen in order to allow us to service our social relationships with more than one person at a time, or more than one individual at a time.
Well, this is corporate video conferencing. Very impressive, multiple cameras, an integrated touch screen, hidden microphones, and an imposing boardroom. People can sit here and hold meetings with other groups halfway around the world. The problem is that they often find that difficult and they are disappointed. And the reason is they want to substitute video conferencing for real face-to-face. They're trying to apply the rules of one situation to another.
We buy technologies to replace our need to meet and talk in the same place and the same time, continually greedy to extend the boundaries of our community. But communication technologies have never replaced old ways of talking. they've created new, unexpected possibilities.
It turns out that some of the most successful uses of video conferencing are in education, where children in classrooms are finding new ways to use this communication technology. They're doing things that simply couldn't be done before.